So, Professor, it's lovely to be in conversation with you. How are you today?
Oh, I'm great. Always great when I see you.
Thanks. Well, I had the joy of meeting you for the first time at the Duttweiler Institute, and your talk was so compelling. The theme of the day was about noise and standing out amidst this sea of turbulence and disinformation. And one of the things that stood out for me was the clarity and richness of your perspective. You've written so many books. I'm going to link to them in the show notes. But I'd like to start by asking you the question that I ask all my guests. And that's, if we imagine a global human psyche, if we imagine such a thing exists, what do you think is happening in that global psyche right now, at this moment in time?
Hmm. Global psyche, interesting idea. Huh? So, so that's all of us. Huh? Okay. Now, I think we are in a time which is endangered by technological paternalism and a number of other uh, problems we have, and also by a more and more people think that it's not up to them to decide, but
Yeah.
there would be something else. There could be an AI or an AGI or a superintelligence. If it's not here, it's coming. And what I see, the trust in one's own intuition, in one's own judgment, is waning.
So you talk about paternalism. I'm curious about, especially in a moment where in many countries in the West, there's a secularization that's happened, where this idea of some kind of savior-like father figure God has waned. Do you think that there is a deep human desire or impulse to have this kind of paternalistic figure that's migrated from this absent religious space into this technological space? Is it something that we can first, I'm curious, like, your take on that, and is it something that we can harness in a way that is more helpful to human agency and critical thinking, or is it a deeper problem than that? Not that that's not a deep problem, it's a deep problem.
So, if you read Immanuel Kant's beautiful essay on the Enlightenment, and he starts out by making the point, and that's a long time ago, and it's as valid as today, that enlightenment means getting out of one's own reluctance to make decisions, to look for an authority. And we have that again. I think it's something we should get rid of. Enlightenment is still in the future. And on your question about the godlike interpretation of AI, some of my best Californian friends, they believe in AI because they think they could live forever. So that's the automobile repair model. Huh? You can repair every piece of your body by some machinery. And at the end, you might be influenced by Kurzweil and his fantasies about uploading our brains into the superintelligence when it comes. The problem is only that the coming of the superintelligence is delayed and delayed and delayed. It was in 29. There is no sign of it. It's now 45. And the problem is whether we still all live then, if it's further delayed. And the other problem is, why would a superintelligence be so dumb to want our brains
That's a really good
uploaded?
point. I have never heard someone say, look, if there was a super intelligent organism entity that was an AGI, would it not have also the agency to decide what to assimilate into its mind structure and what not? It reminds me of, did you ever watch Star Trek? It reminds me of the Borg Queen, you know, there's that kind of, the Borg Queen who comes and creates this hive mind and assimilates people. So I'm curious, thinking about authority, even if we're lucky enough to have the luxury to think about making our own decisions, to have the human right to be able to exercise our will, it can still be quite a painful thing, a costly thing, to face into the difficult questions of what it is to be alive and how to live, and even things like taking responsibility for one's decisions. It can be quite a painful process to go through, and I think there's a question around how do we encourage people to do that work, because it's not necessarily fun or pleasant.
That's true, yeah. It's much more easier to let someone else decide about one's life and then complain.
Yeah. So what are some strategies around that on a macro level as well as on an individual level?
Yeah. On the other hand, I think I live only once. And when you live your life by letting others decide about what you do, what you love, what you fear, then it's kind of lost life, isn't it? And if you lose your friends by becoming independently minded, and your friends might be anti-vaxxers, or maybe just naive technology hopers, and then I think that's a price, yes, and it may be painful, but get better friends.
Yeah, I mean, there is that. I wonder also if there's something about, and I notice this with conversations, especially among younger people, not to generalize too broadly, but the idea that in the research I've read, when people spend more time on dating apps or with chatbots, our tolerance for friction with other humans diminishes because you're not practicing what it is to come into disagreement with someone or take a risk or upset someone. What are some of the ways that you see our interaction with technology now eroding that capacity? To kind of the willingness to lose friends to grow.
No, there are a number of experiments and non-experimental studies who show exactly that. Yeah, and there are also good evidence that one of the reasons are the algorithms that direct you to either extreme positions or also just your own bubble. And that's here we are at one of the big core problems of current business models, which is the personalized advertisement model. And the logic is very clear. If you finance a social media website or something similar by advertisements, and then you as the platform, you're being paid by the number of impressions or clicks, then you need to maximize the time that the users spend on the platform in order to maximize your profit. And how do you do this? By setting the algorithms to send you into outrageous topics, into extreme topics and unscientific topics, and also people to join people that say basically, yeah, it's all right. Everything is right. What do you think? What you don't learn based on this business model is to argue with people who have a different opinion and to become a mature person rather than that just distinguish between friends and foes and enemies and that's a danger. And here one could, if governments would be smart enough, they could find a legal way to prevent that advertisement-based model that wouldn't solve all problems, but it would solve a number of problems. For instance, that the platforms do everything to keep young people glued on the platform, and when they leave, there's an urge to open it again. That will be done, for instance, by a regular Netflix type model. You just pay a certain sum per month.
It's interesting because at the moment there's obviously been that watershed case in the States with the young woman who's referred to just by her initials, taking some of these social giants to court for the structure of their platforms designed to keep people coming back in. And I think it has to be a legal intervention, because even for mature, let's say of age, because maturity is a different structure, but even for adults, it's quite tempting to escape into this world of variable rewards, especially when there's so much panic and stress and suffering happening in the world. It's a very tempting thing to want to escape. And actually, I'd like to take this moment to ask you about one of your many recent books, but how to stay smart in a smart world, and why human intelligence still beats algorithms. Because it seems, I mean, you wrote this book a couple of years ago, but it seems that its moment is really now. People are finally having public conversations about what human intelligence is, what's the value of humanity if, and it's a big if some of the things that we economically value can be simulated by machines. And so first I'd like to ask, what moved you to write this book? Why did you write it?
So I've been studying decision-making for a long time. I've been interested in intuition. So particular intuition means it's based on lots of experience, and you feel that something that you shouldn't do or should do, but you can't explain it. So I've been interested in how humans function, how our minds, and human intuition has been under, there was a war against human intuition. There still is going on in parts of behavioral economics, where experiments have been done. Danny Kahneman, for instance, had said that much of his work was to show that human intuition goes wrong. And so all these biases and these things, and I have been running experiments showing it's not true. And of course you can fool people. One makes an error, but the idea that algorithms would be always better than humans is simply not true. In particular, it seems to be that many of those who design the algorithms do not always understand the basic principles. For instance, there are situations where less is more. We've shown them. That means you use less data and you do better. And it's not so difficult to understand. For instance, if you're in a situation of uncertainty, you want to predict the future, and the future is not like yesterday, then using big data, which is always from the past, will mislead you. So, and as a very practical applications, when we've shown that, for instance, Google Flu Trends algorithm, big data algorithm, tried to predict for 8 years the flu. So precisely the flu-related doctor visits, which is a good idea and useful. But they didn't understand that they're in a world of uncertainty, not of calculated risk. Flu is highly unreliable, and that's why we have every year a new vaccine. And flu is like people. Those are unreliable. We are hard to predict. And these are the situations where big data and complex algorithms fail. And for instance, what I call psychological AI is the idea to use insight about the human mind to make algorithms better. And in this case, we use a very simple heuristic that people use. It's called the recency heuristic. You just take the last data, the most recent one, and ignore all the rest. And then Predictive look. And it does much better over all 8 years than what the Google engineers could set up with the secret black box algorithms and tons of data. So that's part of my interest, and this idea about less is more, and which led me to one part of what's in How to Stay Smart in a Smart World, namely the subtitle, Why Human Intelligence is Still Better than machines, and more precisely, to distinguish situations where complex algorithms work and where they don't. That's the real question. And that's the stable world principle. That means if you have a stable world, and maybe even rules that you have to obey, like chess, Go, industry applications, then we are now at a time where algorithms beat humans. That, no question. But if you have an unstable world, there's uncertainty, like the flu or the COVID virus or most of humans, then there is no evidence that complex algorithms would do systematically better than what humans do, or simple algorithms. So that's what I call heuristics, like the recency heuristic. So we need to think a little bit. Where are complex algorithms likely to perform well, and where aren't they? The question is not when is it in 2029 or in 2039 when algorithms will reign everything. No, they will not reign everything. They will be better in playing games and other stable world problems. Protein folding is a physical problem. Here it works. And ChatGPT works well because the corpus in a language, the associations between words, are highly stable. They change maybe in 50 years. And so this is one way to understand better what you can do and what you cannot do. So if you are the head of a police department and now a company comes and wants to sell you predictive policing software, use the stable world principle. Are criminals highly predictable? No. So then better say thank you with your software. We rather train the intuitions of our policemen.
So I'm curious then, thinking about the police, the police use of AI to predict criminal activity, which is something that actually caught headlines in the UK recently. There are algorithms that are obviously used for real-time facial recognition. Is that something that you think complex algorithms can be effective in? So the recognizing of a face would be a stable principle, presumably over time, but the behavior by an unreliable human over time is unstable. Have I understood that correctly?
Yes. And also in the case of face, one needs to differentiate. So there are identification. So you are you open your smartphone with your face. That's wonderful. It's a stable world. It's usually you and the picture in the smartphone of you. And the same on border control. A second, but mass surveillance doesn't work well. Mass surveillance means you just compare 50,000 people in a football stadium with a criminal databases. Good luck. Why does it work well? Because there are so many false positives. And between these two extremes, there is also a situation that is both useful and where face recognition works. It is, for instance, if you're in something happens in a subway, there's a video camera, and you have the tape, and you know
Yeah.
this person violated the law, and then you can compare this with a database. So here we have three types. One is authentication, like you're opening your smartphone. You have one-to-one, basically. The other one is identification. So there is the suspect. It's one-to-many. And then you have the mass surveillance. So there's many and 100,000s to 100,000s. And that doesn't work.
So I'm thinking as you're describing these use cases or scenarios, I've been rewatching. It's a BBC series that first came out in the pandemic called Capture, and the premise is that deepfake videos can be inserted into live CCTV streams to create corrected images, videos that can then be used in courts of law to put people behind bars. So the idea is that you could have a deepfake insertion of a video into a CCTV and then put people away. I'm wondering, with these sorts of, we've seen, with the Nudify apps in January and Grok and all of the issues around that, how convincing deepfake videos have become and are becoming, and real-time deepfakes are becoming, even though there are still some limitations. What are your thoughts about how these systems, how reliable or resistant to this type of disinformation are they? So do you think it's wise for police people to be using AI recognition software when these systems can be manipulated after the fact or during CCTV? Like, what's your thought on that?
I mean, the question why the police uses this kind of predictive policing system is probably because they don't know the
So it's an
stable growth
education issue.
principle. And I believe the marketing type of the companies who want to sell them. I have worked with a number of police departments, and it's also in part what's called defensive decision-making in psychology. Defensive decision-making means you think that option A is the best one for the public, with the police, and but you deliberately follow and recommend a second-class option B. Why would you do that? In order to protect yourself if something goes wrong. And I've worked with one large police department, and they say that's their problem. They have to, every demonstration, they think option A is the best to do, but then they think, how would the media react and report that? What do we do? And they'd rather go on the safe side, do something different. And something similar is with the police. So, in respect to the predictive policing, so if they have a machine that tells them where to go and whom to suspect, and it's wrong,
the accountability
it's not
shifts.
their fault. So that's a second reason. Marketing hype is one, not knowing the stable world principle, and the third one is defensive decision-making. We have now a machine. We are no longer responsible.
So what do you think are some of the biggest risks that we face? So, and you've mentioned some of them. So the idea that actually people don't understand the principle of stable versus unstable or unreliable world, and in which contexts different approaches are more reliable. But are there some other risks that you think we face at this moment in time when there is a real push to adopt AI platforms quickly, especially from people in Silicon Valley who are selling us the doomer boomer narrative, the idea that this technology is so powerful it will either save or destroy humanity? What are some of the other risks that you think we're less aware of?
I think technological paternalism is a big risk to me, that on the one side, the prophets of some superintelligence tell us that technology can do everything better than you. Google knows you better than you. And we should basically be so rational to just follow whatever the prophets or AI tells us. So that's this type of an old situation that in the good old days, your king told you what you should do, what's right to believe, and how to behave. And then the big heads of the corporation did the same thing, and workers worked for it and devoted their life. And now we have a new group of oligarchs, and their names are well known. And in the Western world, it's Elon Musk, it's a Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos, and so on, who are busy convincing us in different ways that they know better than we. And we have Peter Thiel, we have Andreessen, and a number of people who say openly that freedom is not compatible with democracy, that there should be a kind of autocracy. And the key problem here is that AI is not used for the best of the people, which could easily be done. Think about Wikipedia. But it's used for making profit for a few people. And why does Elon Musk need over $600 billion? That's his last estimate. What do you do with this money? You could try to make a better world. But so these are some of the problems. The problem is not AI. It's not at all. The problem are the people behind AI and their interests.
So thinking about that then, I think there's a few things that I'd like to draw upon. So one of them is changing the incentives or the structures that permit people who are so self-interested, like all those men that you just described, to rise to the top and then accumulate power and wealth through technology, through marketing schemes, basically saying this is the next big thing. But basically, so it seems to me that there's a systemic issue, which is that these people are rewarded for specific behaviors that often are exploitative. They're often ruthless. I know that you're a psychologist, and I know that the dark tetrad are often witnessed in people who perform in these sorts of ways. So I think one of my questions is, how do we begin to change the system so we end up with different leaders, different results? And then I'll come to the second question later. So maybe let's start there. Where do you think, because it's a very human problem as well you're describing.
Yes, it is not easy, but it has been done many times before. We had other technologies that were used to suppress people. And in the US, they got fairly rid of the robber barons. So there are possibilities. And the two key players are governments, so legal systems. And we all should be grateful for the European Union has been a model striving there. They are fighting huge lobbyist groups. And while in the US, it's very little going on. And on the other end is us, so the people who could do something. They could do their little things. If you're unhappy about what Elon Musk did or does, then don't buy a Tesla.
It's true.
If you are unhappy about Zuckerberg's strategy to have only one goal, to maximize profit at a cost. As we know now that Facebook and now Meta knowingly takes, knowingly accepts that masses of teenagers are more depressed than before Facebook, are more lonely, are more unhappy with themselves. And all these consequences, if you think like that, then get off of Facebook, Instagram, and the others that he owns. These are all things we can do. My life without Facebook or Instagram is
so
great.
It is great. I was literally just talking to someone who told me that, I mean, he made an executive decision back in 2008 to expunge all of his presence across any social media account except LinkedIn, where he has one line. And he hired a consultant to do it, and he's still managed to work really well. But it's quite, I'd say you have to be in a fairly specific position to be able to come off all of these platforms. I think one of the issues also is the sense of it's kind of like a collective action problem, that if all your friends are on there, how do you move people en masse? So there's like the individual sense of agency and will and desire, and then the collective context within which decisions are made. What are some of the ways in which you think we can solve for that? Because that's harder. Yeah.
You're right. You're right. We are already captives. Captives of Meta or and others. And also companies have become captives of, say, Amazon. And the strategy is very simple. First, you get customers on a platform, then the companies. And you only take little money from the companies, and the customer is free. And then, once you have them, the Amazon once took around 15% out of the revenues of the companies that where you could buy the products on. And now numbers are never really clear, but they're at least double as much and sometimes up to 50%. So Jeff Bezos is really killing, or taking out so much money out of the companies. Not really killing, that would be not a good idea, but exploiting them. They're also captives. We live in a world where many of us are captives and have the same problem. How do we get out of it? But we need to get out of it. And one way is, if you can personally do it, do it. And the other side is there must be laws that protect the people rather than the big tech billionaires.
So thinking about then what people can do individually, we're talking about agency. One of the things I'm most concerned about, well, there's many things I'm concerned about, but one of them is because we know that we are being surveilled, either because it's our social feeds that are being, the data of which is being sold off, or we know, for instance, I was reading about this literally yesterday, that the contents of a Zoom call is used to inform and train AI models. Like, we know that this is the case now, and it's becoming increasingly clear how little value is placed on privacy. And obviously, people care about their privacy, but there's the values action gap where I care about my privacy, but I still use Zoom. So there's this dissonance between these positions. How can people reclaim greater agency? As part of the issue, is part of the issue understanding that we need to make different choices and then looking for different products? Because I know, for instance, in the EU, there's Proton Privacy and Proton Mail, which is a company that is an alternative to Google, Gmail and Gcalendar. Or, for instance, the Swiss, I think it's EHR, I keep forgetting the name of it, but the Swiss LLM that you can use that treats your data privately. So there are alternatives, but it seems to me that the European ecosystem of technologies is not quite as developed technologically, it seems, as in the States. And yet we need to make this switch so we're less reliant on the companies that extract our data and undermine our agency. So I'm just curious, what are the areas that give you a sense of hope where we can reclaim agency?
Yeah. First, I think we can, yeah. But we need better politicians and better people. So so for instance, I've been doing surveys in Germany about risk literacy and also digital risk literacy in a broad sense, what people know, but also what they feel, what their motivation is. And we asked a representative sample of Germans, what are your greatest fears concerning the digital life? And one of the greatest fears was, I don't know what's happening with my data, what's being done, for what's being used, maybe health issues, maybe financial issues. So this was the biggest concern. And then we asked them, assume that all social media could be changed so that it's no longer advertisement based, but people pay for it, so that your data will not go to any personalized type of advertisement or personalized type of use. How much would you willing to pay for your freedom per month? Now, 75% of Germans said nothing. And only the rest was willing to pay something. And interestingly, we looked whether it's more the younger or the older who would be paying. It's actually the younger, they understand better. Yeah.
That's not necessarily what I expected. That's quite reassuring.
There is some hope here among this minority who wants to pay. And look, this is Germany. And we are a country where we have memories about the Stasi. The Stasi would have embraced, most likely, this tool of total surveillance and getting out the data and manipulating people's emotions and their desires, or even earlier during the Nazi time. So Germans should be alert. But it's not the case. That's what I meant with better people. We need people who think a little bit more out of the little box. What is, how much do I like this photo that I just got about this wonderful cat, or another selfie, or another cake that I have? Is this really the world in which you want to spend the rest of your life? So we need people who think, but the problem is that quite many are already captive. They're conditioned by the usual tools like intermittent reinforcement or Pavlovian conditioning. And that's also important to understand that. So think about, so the Facebook at the beginning was a quiet, unstressful opportunity. And we should go back to that. Don't need to be connected to 1,000 and 100,000 of people. You just want your group of, maybe 24 real friends. And that you can do outside of Facebook. You could all go into that. Some European platform where you pay, actually. That's very important. You pay for the service because it has to be maintained, and to avoid that, advertisers pay for the service. And that's the question with freedom. And if you're conditioned, then what Facebook did is, so the original Facebook was not a profit-making machine. So Zuckerberg introduced the newsfeed. The newsfeed opened it up. Your small community opened it up to everyone. And thousands of people protested. But Zuckerberg won. He changed the motivation from privacy, that's what against the protesters, that now everyone can read and comment on my post and also hate me and accuse me. That was his, that's what the consequences, maybe not his idea, but this generates engagement. And so then together with the newsfeed, an algorithm was introduced. You no longer saw the most recent post up there, but the algorithm thought it's most profitable for the advertisers. And then we know the story. Notifications were introduced. Notifications, they are in part responsible for the fact that young people sleep an hour less than before. And then the likes were introduced, and that was really the big winner, because now I could measure what people want and what not, and people started to count their likes.
Like the quantification of self-worth, I think, is an incredibly dangerous thing, especially for people. I remember what it was like to be a teenager, and it's not an easy time, that period of life. And then if you add into that mix of hormones and identity development and am I part of this group or that group, you add in the mix all of that kind of social noise and validation and hating and liking and
That always been the case, but now the way AI has been shaped amplifies all this, and you have it 24 hours a day. And that's a big problem, and it's a health problem. It's both a problem for the mental health, which is very nicely has been documented in this great book some time ago by Jean Twenge. And also it's also a cognitive problem. There's less attention to this. So if you look at the PISA studies, so the OECD studies of 15-year-olds, and the around 2012, things have gone down. All three areas: reading, math, and science. So in Germany, in the year 2000, when the first PISA study was done, and my colleague at the Max Planck Institute, he did the German part of the study, Jürgen Baumert, and Germany believed we are at the top. Of course, our education systems. So in 1870-71, when Germany won the war against France, the French attributed to the German teachers. Yes, and reformed their own teaching system. So Germany still believed we are on the top, and then we ended up below average. That was the PISA shock. What happened then? The German politicians changed things, and according to PISA, so the performance went up from 2000, 2003, 2006, till 2012, and then it went down, and now it's lower than in 2000. Was the PISA shock, and there are many possible explanations, and one decisive factor is smartphones. And smartphones were introduced around 2012. I mean, introduced in Germany, about 50% of all young people had smartphones. And then you can see that. There are other factors, but it's not COVID. COVID came much later. COVID had its own effect. And So, as far as we know, the way AI is used in a way that few people profit from that, and many are harmed, and they are captured so that they really can't get out. And the great idea of Zuckerberg was to use social life, to reorganize social life into posting, sharing, liking, editing, and it's very hard for young people to get out into the real world again, where you talk to someone, where you watch the other's reaction, where you have eye contact, and where you're not dependent and you're not the vehicle of getting more advertisement revenue for Meta.
It's a funny one. I remember, well, when I was doing the talk at Duitweiler, where we were both speaking, one of the things that I think I found really uplifting in my research was looking at counter trends to some of this capture and how many people in younger generations, despite the costs against them, of not being visible online. So thinking, many people believe they have to have a personal brand and be available and active on social channel, especially like, LinkedIn and the rest of it. But despite the risk to their personal brand and being able to get future jobs and followers, many people are coming offline because they see that the cost is too high. And what's particularly curious is that, I remember when I was 16 getting my first, it was like a Nokia, and it was a dumb phone, but it allowed you to stay in touch, but every text cost money. And so you would use it sparingly. There was back to your point about it being something that you pay for. And I think there's a real emphasis there of being aware of the value exchange that's happening. But I remember even back then the sense that you could still leave your phone at home, or you could go and play out in the forest or whatever it was. And that for adults now, it's a rediscovery of those things. But for this, there's a large cohort of young people who grew up with these technologies in their pocket, for whom leaving that at home or being face to face with other people without a phone to hide behind, that's a new discovery. It's a new experience. It's not something that they've ever had contact with before. And so I'm very interested also in how do we create opportunities for younger people to encounter that joy and fear and risk-taking that was part of our childhoods growing up, that we didn't think twice about. And that maybe that's also part of it, of kind of freeing ourselves from the captivity of our screens and of liking and this constant self-referential, am I being liked enough? Am I being bold enough? Am I causing enough engagement? Like it's a very performative position to take, which means that everything that we do, or much of what we do, is in response to an external other, which then becomes internalized. And then what happens to our internal world when it's kind of populated by often imagined people that we're never going to get to meet? So I don't know, and I think part of moving us out of this captivity and self-captivity in a sense is creating moments for people to come into contact with others and with the living world and with risk.
In psychology, it's called the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So, extrinsic motivation is if you if you do something in order to show it to something else and get reinforcement. And intrinsic would be that you do something or learn something because you enjoy it. So if you learn guitar,
I've got two
playing
of mine
the
right
guitar
back there.
by yourself, and don't think about showing it off to someone. That's intrinsic motivation. If you learn guitar only by recording it, videotaping it, and sending it to your social network in order to get likes, that's different. I just have seen the TV video of an experiment in Austria where a teacher had asked the children were between 16 and 18, so young people, whether they would like to participate in an experiment. The experiment was to have no smartphone
Ooh, great.
for a month.
What did they say?
And about 60 or so participated, and they had to hand in, as I understood, the smartphone to the school, not to their parents, because there would be probably a huge burden on the parents.
Very big burden.
Okay. And I could always give up, that's fine. And actually, the first girl gave up the next day because I cannot live without smartphone. But most of them, 2/3, they survived the time. And then they were interviewed also during the time. And it was most interesting, so to the differentiation between internal and external motivation, that some of them discovered that there's an intrinsic motivation. So one of them said, I went for a hike, and I noticed I don't have my phone with me to make pictures and send it to someone and then see whether they liked it. I realized I actually could like it myself and enjoy the situation myself.
That's heartbreaking, actually.
And but you see, that's the difference. And it's also a kind of solution that one observes something, visits a city, or just does something interesting without posting it or without the goal of posting it. Just try to enjoy your own life and be independent with your emotions from others. And it's very hard for many people, including also the cognitive, so thinking has become unpopular.
So true.
Which is a real danger for democracy, for many things. There's an experiment a few years ago in the US, and a dear colleague of mine had asked undergraduates to enter a room, leave everything outside, like phones and books, everything, and just sit there for about 10 minutes and think. Think about your past of your life, what you've done and not done, about the present or future. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? And there was nothing in this room, like books or magazines, nothing to do but to think. And about half of them reported this was a very unhappy situation for me. They didn't like to be alone with themselves. They did not know what to do with themselves. They only knew what to do to post others. And in a second version of the experiments, the experimenters gave the undergraduates the opportunity when they're sitting there.
This is awful.
And they are very uncomfortable with themselves. They could press a button and get an electric shock. And 2/3 of the male participants pressed the shock. They rather had a light electric shock than being with themselves. They need to be somehow entertained from outside.
And what was the proportion of women? Do you remember?
It was only 25%, roughly. So there was a difference. But I don't know whether that could be systematic. But what the thing says, one of the hardest things for many young people is to do something with oneself, to talk to oneself, as opposed to text to others.
It's such a shame because I think, so I'm a painter and a musician, and much of what I used to do at home when I was little or when I was feeling I always felt kind of on the periphery of things, would be to make music or to paint or to create or to write and I know that you just described a situation in which you're not allowed any creative expression, you can just think. But I think if we're constantly responding, then there's very little time to give ourselves that space and that quiet that's needed to come to know ourselves and also to create beauty in the world. And
Mm,
things that are perhaps poetic or new, because I think a lot of these things, and you mentioned intrinsic motivation, this morning I went out and sat on my little bench in the garden and looked up, and the swifts have arrived in Barcelona where I live. And
mm,
it's one of the things that gives me the most joy is when they return and you can hear their shrill cries, in the sky, and they sometimes dip down. And it was
mm.
just 20 minutes, just sitting there with my coffee and my little blanket, looking up at the swifts and thinking, I wonder if they take pleasure in their flight, and look at the light as they flap their wings and it's that kind of stillness where you're not being constantly interrupted by your phone that means that you can take in the world and respond to its beauty. And you mentioned at the top of our conversation, and
Yeah,
actually throughout this conversation, we only get one life. We only get that we know of. I mean, who knows? But
yeah,
that's all we're certain of is this moment in this life. And I wonder if we're going to have a generation of people who perhaps too late realize how much time they've lost in this externalizing state.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. On music, I was a
oh, wait,
musician in an
what were you a
earlier
musician
career
in?
because, well, oh, I, uh, so I started
Yeah,
with 17 to earn my own money. I wanted to become
right.
independent of my parents, and played in
Wow.
jazz bands, in Dixieland bands, and all kind of everything that I could do. There's still um,
Eh,
a video on
I'll
YouTube.
have to find it. What's
Yeah.
your instrument? Would
So
you?
at, in the video, it's
Oh, very
banjo.
cool.
So this was when VW Volkswagen brought up a new
Yeah.
car, the Golf, huh? Or the Rapid, they don't know. Yeah? And they made a contest. They wanted to have a TV ad and a very lively band who comes on with the car and doors up and out
Ah,
of, and the music goes on. And we
amazing.
won the contest. And the video is still on. There's a red car. I'm on the steering wheel
No
and
way.
with the banjo. You can look. Yeah, just put in my name, Gigerenzer, and
Amazing. I'm
VW
going to add that to
Golf.
the notes.
So I have seen that. In music, you have both parts. So there's the extrinsic motivation.
Mhm.
You're on the stage. I've been 14 years on the stage. Play for the music, and you play in a way that you listen very carefully
Mm.
what the audience likes. The audience dislike, you play it this way. Mm. And that's very similar to what's happened on if you post, and people don't post always what they really like, but they see
Yeah.
what others like and they change that. Yeah. And then there's another kind of music. That is when you are, or in my case,
Mhm.
when I'm at home and
Mm.
playing something on the piano
Yeah.
for nobody. Just to learn it, to be together
Yeah.
with this piece of music, and just learn how to
Mhm.
express it, to feel it. And this is certainly a very different
Mm.
kind of joy and feel. And it also makes yourself more uh, being
Mhm.
inside of you. I'm not dependent here. I'm not playing for someone where then want whether the person nods or likes. No, I'm playing and I see myself whether I'm in good form today, whether it's really music or it's just playing the notes. So this is an important thing, and I think it can everyone, young and old. So what we
Yeah.
are saying is not just for young people; it's for all. Yeah. Some of my best friends are so
Mm.
dependent from their smartphones, and they don't even notice it anymore when they open it. It's automatic behavior. It's in part Pavlovian conditioning. So it's automatic responses, and you can see this if you are on a social media site or on TikTok, and after half an hour scrolling, you can't
Yeah.
remember what you have done.
Yeah.
Then you're on the lost side. You're under total control of the algorithm.
Yeah.
And then you might think, is this the rest of my life, or do I want to live a life?
Yeah. It's funny, I was talking about this with someone this morning about, well, we were talking about the dissonance that exists in this moment where, on the one hand, technology can offer so much. Back to your point about stable worlds, thinking about the first new antibiotic in 60 years that was discovered with the help of AI tools. So these kind of stable world under specific parameters. And on the other hand, the capacity that AI chatbots in particular have to capture our intimacy as well as our attention, thinking about the chatbots and these companion avatars, and how actually it seems to me, this is my great hope, and then I'll end with a question for you. It seems to me that we're at a point where people are starting to ask big questions. What does it mean to be human when we can simulate relationships, when we can simulate a conversation with an intelligent other? Because actually there are costs, the costs of cognitive surrender, or, with your work on decision making, of outsourcing that hard analytical labor to another, like a cognitive prosthesis, like a large language model. And so I'd like to end by asking you, what are your greatest hopes and your greatest fears thinking about how technology could impact our futures?
Yeah. Remember, it's always the people behind the technology. It's not the technology. The technology, digital technology, is not bad or good. It can be used to very good things. So in my work as a researcher, I hardly can imagine going back to libraries. And the internet is a great source, but you need to know where to find reliable sources and where not. And you need to critically think about that. And I also try to keep my time under control. For instance, always, if I can, I'm not opening any emails or something like that before
Nice.
noon. So I have time to write, to do research, to think. And I have seen many of my graduate students or postdocs who sit in front of the desk computer, do some scientific research, and have their email or some social media on all the time. They're just waiting to be interrupted. And when you then read what they produce, you can almost guess when they were interrupted.
Yeah.
Flow is no longer there. And so I think every one of us can take over control again over part of his time. It's not so impossible. And also, if you think it's so important what others, even people you don't know, like and their comments, then think a moment, do I really want to be so dependent from others? Yeah. And in terms of the larger picture, I mean, there's a positive version that we learn to use AI for doing research, for informing us, for getting smarter. But we also should know that there are certain misuses of AI, and I include most of social media, that we should avoid. And we might, if we are not strong enough, then we might vote for politicians who are strong enough.
Yeah.
So to make it very simple, my vision of the future is, of the good future is, to go back to what we thought about the internet during the 1990s.
I'm right there with you. It was
Yeah,
great, wasn't it?
I was also a believer. It's finally we get independent of state control, of industry control, of all those who want to manipulate us. But it worked for some time. Then the surveillance capitalists took it over, including our own emotions and our own desires, and redefined what it means to meet with friends. And the worst vision of the future is that the Zuckerbergs, the Elon Musk, or the Jeff Bezos, and what comes after them will keep control and will make control stronger over all of us, and not just the users, but also the companies, in Amazon's case, and create a monopoly where we are the slaves. Our time is the slave. We give away our time, our attention, and our lives in order to make them richer. And they will disappear on Project Mars. Leave us here with a totally polluted environment. That's the worst things, but I don't think it will happen. I think people will be smart enough to rebel and to take over control over the internet again.
Gerd, thank you so much. Here is to a joyful rebellion. It's been such a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much.